Hey, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about our state affects our interpretation. We probably all want to think that we are always 100% logical, that no matter what the circumstance, that we are always using 100% of our reason, and that regardless of our mood, regardless of our state, and regardless of the situation, that we can trust our conclusions in exactly the same way as any other conclusion that we would make. But probably thinking that over more thoroughly, we realize that, well, maybe some of the time I don't think exactly the same way as I would have otherwise. So we might consider something like being very tired. So being tired, of course, affects people's mood typically, and obviously it kind of muddles our thinking in some ways that we aren't thinking exactly straight all the time when we're tired. And this, of course, has been studied, that cognitive performance goes down whenever people are sleep deprived, even if they don't realize it. And so obviously something like that could affect our thinking, and we've probably experienced that personally. Or something like being very hungry, that if we're hungry and we're really wanting to eat, that this might affect our mood, this might affect our thinking, and we may not behave in exactly the same way before we have eaten and after we have eaten. And this has even been observed in judges, from my understanding, that if a person is going in and receiving some kind of judgment from a judge, that they want to be receiving it after the judge has eaten lunch, because verdicts tend to be more merciful after the judge has eaten, supposedly. And so obviously these sorts of things can affect how it is that we're handling something. And this could also relate to how we are interpreting the law. And we see this, for example, with alcohol in the Torah. Obviously, alcohol and things like that have an obvious effect on the mind, and we see this mentioned in regard to interpreting the law. Leviticus 10:8-11 says, "And Yahuwah spoke to Aaron to say, Wine and intoxicant you must not drink, you and your sons with you, in your coming to tent of meeting, and you shall not die, and to cause to divide between the hallowed and between the profane, and between the unclean and between the clean, and to cause to direct sons of Israel all of the enactments which Yahuwah spoke to them in hand of Moses." So obviously something like alcohol can have a significant effect on the mind, and it can affect someone's interpretation. And this is even the case with the priests, because the priests, they are effectively to be the experts on the Torah, and yet it is going to affect them. It was enough to make it a command that they do not drink as they come to the tent of meeting, because it would affect the way they're interpreting the hallowed as opposed to the profane, and it would affect how they were directing the people to observe the commandments given through Moses. And so if that is the case, obviously that could be the case with us and how we are interpreting the law. And I would argue that this extends beyond just the issue of alcohol or drugs or anything like that. That this could even come down to just different states that we experience throughout the day, or different situations that are overly pressuring or overly stressful. We may feel inclined to interpret things one way, whereas we wouldn't have out of the situation. And so for that reason, I think we need to kind of anticipate these things. And not only anticipate the situation, but anticipate the fact that we are not always exactly the same. That we don't always think in exactly the same way as we would when we are completely reasonable, or when we think that we are being completely logical. That it's not always the same. That can fluctuate. And under pressure and under stress, we may be inclined to compromise, and we wouldn't even perceive it as that necessarily. We wouldn't even realize that we're doing it, but we may realize afterward. So I think we need to anticipate situations like that and try to figure out any relevant laws before it comes to that. Figure out what we're going to do while we know that we can be reasonable about it, and not let it just wait until that situation, not just let it fall on that situation and then decide, oh, I guess I need to figure out that command. Because then we may not be able to in that same way. So consider that we do have different states that we go through. We have different states of mind and different ways that we think. Different things can affect this for different people, but we all experience it in one way or another. And of course, this can affect our interpretation of the law, and this can affect our observance. Thanks for watching, and remember the commands. Shalom.